and super happy to have in the, I was going to say in the studio, I'm in your offices where we are at a conference room at the headquarters of Greenpeace USA, and with us is Annie Leonard, the Executive Director of Greenpeace USA, and you can tweet her at Annie M. Leonard, do I have that right, or at Greenpeace USA, and Thom Wetterer, who is the General Counsel, a fancy way of saying the head lawyer for Greenpeace USA, and it's great to have both of you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for coming.
It's great having you. So, Annie, you guys are facing a, and I mean that in the gender neutral, growing up in Michigan, that was y'all are facing this real substantial threat, it seems, a legal threat. You want to tell us about it?
That's right. We're facing two huge lawsuits, and Thom can tell you more of the detail of those lawsuits, but I wanted to first sort of frame them in the broader context of threat that we're seeing. You know, I've been an environmental activist for 30 years, and Greenpeace has been active for now 46 years, and during those times we have fought to save forests and fought to stop toxic dumping and fought excessive consumerism and saved Antarctica and did all these things, but right now what's really at threat is our ability to do that. And that may sound dramatic, but I'm actually deeply worried about this. We're seeing across the board in this country a crackdown on activism that is taking a lot of different forms. It's taking things like vilifying activists, like we saw President Trump talking about the NFL players, saying they should be fired.
And Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
And the 200 protesters who got busted here in D.C.
The J20 protesters.
60-year felonies or something.
So vilifying, criminalizing like that, silencing dissent. There's a couple dozen laws right now across the country that are at different stages of development that would actually outlaw basic fundamental organizing, gathering groups of people together, sharing information on Facebook. I mean, it's really scary. What we're seeing is through these SLAPP suits. SLAPP, as you listeners probably know, is a strategic lawsuit against public participation. There's 2 lawsuits right now that are aimed to silence and shut us down. Luckily, we're not really the silenceable types, so we're continuing the work and fighting even louder. And I'll hand the mic over to Thom, our lawyer, who can talk about the specific cases.
Right. Thom, and by the way, I seem to recall, I wrote about SLAPP suits in a book I wrote, Unequal Protection, about the Supreme Court and the 14th Amendment back in 2002. And you can't hear me. And it seems to me that I'm generating audio. It seems to me that the SLAPP suits that one of the states, I think it was California, passed an anti-SLAPP suit statute. I mean, so tell us about SLAPP suits and what's going on with this.
Yeah, a number of states have anti-SLAPP statutes, but not all of them. So, that's still something that needs more legislation on that. But SLAPPs are, so we have the 2 lawsuits, as Annie mentioned, and one was filed back in May of 2016 by Resolute Forest Products, and that's Canada's largest logging company. And the most recent one was filed this past August by Energy Transfer Partners, and that's the company behind the Dakota Access Pipeline. And in a nutshell, because they were both filed by the same law firm, Kasowitz, Benson, and Torres, and they've represented Donald Trump and
right, I was going to say Kasowitz is one of his lawyers, isn't
yes,
Mark
Kasowitz?
They've
represented him on a personal basis on a number of different matters. And they've threatened the New York Times, for instance, with libel lawsuits for reporting on some of his escapades.
Remarkable.
So we're facing those 2 very big lawsuits. How much time do we have? Because they're both. The one that was just filed was over 200 pages of the complaint.
We have 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, so I won't have a lot of time to go through all the details. But in a nutshell, they're coming after Greenpeace and other environmental groups for our advocacy work and really speaking out on these issues. In the one case about to protect the boreal forest in Canada, and this latest one about the fight at Standing Rock against DAPL, and they're trying to say that in essence they've structured as a defamation lawsuit about what we've been saying, but also throwing in RICO, which is racketeering laws, to say that we're also kingpins of a grand criminal enterprise to fight back against these companies and to commit crimes, to orchestrate crimes.
RICO is the racketeering organization or racketeering and influenced corrupt organizations, right?
You got it. I think it was from like 1970.
What's the racket that they're accusing you of?
Well,
I mean, this is designed to go against the Gambino family.
Exactly. That was the initial design of it, and they are using. They're saying that everything that we said about the companies in both cases are not only defamatory, but they're intentional lies about the company. They're designed to defraud our donors, and they're also designed to extort their customers with these lies. And then they've thrown in, if you read, take the time to read the 225 pages or whatever in the energy transfer lawsuit, they throw in a lot of other crimes. They put down on paper eco-terrorism and arson and.
It's called the kitchen sink strategy of law, is it not?
Exactly.
Or some variation on that? Just throw everything at it and see what sticks?
On paper, and then if you actually read that, not only are those allegations of crimes very vague, really little detail, but there's no detail at all connecting Greenpeace and the other defendants to those crimes, because they can't, because we were not involved in those. We were involved in legitimate advocacy work, speaking out on these issues. And I will add, in the energy transfer case, it's also wrong about the story of what really happened at Standing Rock. They're trying to make us out to be the puppets, the puppeteers of what, and that's very it's wrong, and it's disrespectful of the indigenous people that really were leading the fight to protect their land, their water, and their sacred lands, their sacred rights. And Greenpeace, along with many others, were standing in solidarity with the indigenous people and really speaking out about these very real threats of the Dakota Access Pipeline, environmentally and also the human rights risks.
Who were the other? You said us. Who are the other groups who were being sued? Was this a?
Yeah, in the energy transfer case, there's also Banktrack, which is a small nonprofit in the Netherlands. And as their name implies, they do work with banks financing. So they, I think, send some letters to banks, to some investors, just pointing out the risk. And a lot of the, at least in one case, where they're accusing them of wrongdoing with the banks, those banks came forward and said, hey, we made the decision on our own based on these very real risks. And then they also named Earth First. We don't even think that's an entity, but they're also named. And as defendants, and then in the pod of the alleged criminal enterprise, they throw in people from like Wesley Clark, Democracy Now!, and a lot of other environmental groups like Rainforest Action Network, and also Earth Justice, who that group filed a lawsuit, and on behalf of the Standing Rock tribe, and they've mentioned them as part of this criminal enterprise for filing a lawsuit.
We're talking with Thom Wetterer, who is the general counsel, the head lawyer here for Greenpeace USA. Is the bottom line kind of essence of all that they're trying to bankrupt you? I mean, litigation can be insanely expensive, and for a small group, even a small SLAPP suit. I mean, these were SLAPP suits were a big deal in the 70s and 80s, if you remember. Yeah. And as I said, I thought a couple states took care of them, but the principal thing is not to win in court; it's to destroy you economically, is it not?
It certainly is, and it's not necessarily the end game. I mean, they've claimed in the first suit with the treble damages of RICO up to like $300 million in damages. The latest one about $900 million, but it's not so much.
You're looking at $1 billion, and
and it's not so much even that, because they don't really have any merit, but it's also the expenses of litigation. The point is to drag the defendants, in this case certainly Greenpeace, through the expenses and the time and the distraction of the litigation process, but it's also to send a message to others to chill others from speaking out too, because they want to send a message that you'll be sued too if you dare to speak out, and you'll also have to face the expenses of litigation and the time that it takes. So that's really the point of these lawsuits, absolutely. And just yesterday, there was an amicus brief that was filed in support of our motion to dismiss in the energy transfer case by the ACLU and NRDC and other groups, and it talks about that very point of what this case, and really these cases, what they represent for First Amendment rights and advocacy if they're successful. And they really need to be dismissed at the earliest stages so that they can't just file whatever in court and then have people be
So
dragged through
in
that
the
process.
1 minute before we hit a break here, Annie, what can people do to support Greenpeace?
Well, they can be an activist. I'll tell you, that's one thing. The point of these lawsuits is to squelch activism at the very time when activism is needed more than ever. So get involved. If you want to join Greenpeace, you can text RESIST to 877-877. That's
Okay.
text RESIST to 877-877 and join our rapid response team, and we'll send you great opportunities to get involved. But whether it's Greenpeace or any other group, we have got to stand up to these corporate powers, stand up to these fossil fuel industries, not be silenced, not be intimidated, and the best way to do that is with cross-movement unity if we stand together.
So cross-movement unity being organizing with other groups?
Absolutely, and we're seeing that now in these cases. We have groups that are working on racial justice, civil rights, immigrants' rights, reproductive justice, all these different groups coming to us, partly because they respect Greenpeace and care about us, but also they know the entire model of being a publicly funded advocacy organization is what's at risk here. It's like first they came for Greenpeace, and if they silence us, who knows who's next.
Remarkable. Annie Leonard and Thom Wetterer with Greenpeace USA, the website greenpeace.org/USA. You can check it out.